Hello all, welcome to Digital Tech Join. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use ADO.NET to connect to your database and perform database operation. In this demo, I'm going to use Microsoft SQL Server Database and use ADO.NET instead of Entity Framework. So let's get started. Create new project. Click on ASP.NET Core Web Application. Select ASP.NET Core Web Application. Click Next. Enter the project name. I have written as ADO.NET Core. Select the location where you want to save it. Click on Create. Select ASP.NET Core Web App Model View Controller. For now, untick HTTPS and click Create. While the project is getting set up, I will show you the database. I have created a Learn SQL database. In my previous session where I discussed and taught about SQL, I had used this database. This database has the following tables. We are going to work with the customer table having few records. In this database, I am going to create procedure which will be called by the application. So let's go ahead and create the required procedure. So we are going to create two procedures. One which will fetch all the records from the customer table, and the second procedure which will take input parameters as a customer ID and display only the selected customer ID information. Okay, so create procedure get all customers as begin and select all from customers. So it's to be created. Select Learn SQL and execute the procedure. So the procedure is created. If you want to test the procedure, you can do it. You simply right click on the procedure and say execute procedure, click OK. So you see all the records are displayed. Now we'll create another procedure which will take the parameter. Let's copy this. Create procedure get customer details by ID, and now this takes a parameter as customer ID as int. Now here it says select all from customers where customer ID equals to customer ID. Even this is executed. Let's execute and check. Executed. Pass the value as 1 and you can see displayed. So we have created both the procedure. Now let's go to our project. Our project is loaded. The first thing we need to do is that add the library. So go to manage NuGet packages. Search for system.data. Select system.data.sql client because our database is Microsoft SQL Server database, and click on install. I accept. Yes, it's done. So that library is installed. You can see it is available over here. Now we'll go ahead and enter the connection details in the app setting.json file. So it's a connection strings, and already had the connection saved over here. Copy this and we paste it over here. So this is a connection string and this is a key name for the connection string, default connection, and we are connecting to our database learn SQL. So connection string are set up. Now we'll create the model class. So go to the model folder, add a class called customers, and add the properties. So we have ID, customer ID, then prop customer name, email address, and mobile. This is a primary key, so we need to reference the class. Fine. So our data model is ready. Now we create a data layer and we are going to use the ADO.NET instead of entity framework. So let's create a folder called data layer and add a class customer DAL. Now here what we are going to do is that you will be fetching the connection string. So let's create a variable called public string connection. This will hold the connection information. Now let's create a constructor where we will so this constructor, what this constructor will do is pull in the connection string from the app setting.json file and assign it to the variable CNN. So let's do that. New configuration base path. So we need to reference the extension class. We'll just using Microsoft extension configuration because we are dealing with the configuration file. So we need to reference that library. It is already done. It's over here. Now set base path directory dot get current directory. Here I think so we need to reference system.io file. Yes. Dot add JSON file and file name is app settings.json and .build. So now this builder variable as the instance of the app setting.json file. Now we can go ahead and access the, so we say CNN and we pull in the connection string. So builder dot get section and we say connection strings colon default connection. Dot value. So connection string and default. So as you see, connection string and then default connection. Similarly, we mentioned with the connection string and default. So now we have the connection string ready. Now let's go ahead and create a method to pull all the customer information as I mentioned using ADO.NET. For that, the first thing we need to do is that refer the using system.data.sql client. So we create a method as public list. We call the customers object model. We refer data.model. Yes, models class, and then we say get all customers. Now let's write the code. So list customers, list of customers equals to new. We return this object, list object, once we fetch the data from the database. Let's use a code using SQL connection cn equals to new SQL connection and pass in the connection string. Then use a command object, SQL command cmd equals to new SQL command, and here we specify the procedure name. So what was the procedure name? It is get all customers. Let's copy this, use this over here and pass the connection string. So first we define the connection to the database, then we define the command object, and we tell the command object to call the get all customers by passing the connection string. Now we check if the connection string is open. As a good practice, cn.state state is closed. If it is closed, cn.open. Now we execute the command and pull all the data into the reader class. So we say idata we don't require this, just idata reader cmd dot execute reader. Now this will execute the database procedure over here and now pass in all the data to the reader class. Now we need to loop in and create since it is returned in dataset format, we need to list format. We require a list format, so we need to build up the list objects. Okay, so we use while reader.read list of customers dot add new customers and we add the semicolon to it. And now here we will pass the data. We'll do the binding over here. Customer name and then email and mobile. Fine, so this is building up the list object. Once the data is set up and all the data is pulled from the reader class to the list object, we return this variable back to the calling method. Return clear. Fine, so our code is ready. So this is the code. We can do is we can go ahead and check the functionality by going to the home controller, going to the index. So in the index, what are we going to do? We are going to first reference the data layer class. Sorry. We will pull in the necessary references, DAL references, data layer, and we say list customers, customer list, also new customer list, and customer list equals to underscore customer DAL get all customers. And then we are going to return the list object to the view. Now let's go ahead in the view and set up the data binding. So here is default. So I have already saved this. This here we are referring the model class, that is customer, and this is our customers page, and here we have placed two buttons, one to search and one to pull all the information, and then we are binding the data by iterating the model. So we are showing customer ID, name, mobile and email address. Let's go ahead and see how the functionality works in action. So let's put a breakpoint. Fine. So we'll step through each code. So the procedure is called over here. I guess our connection string is also retrieved from the database. Now this method calls get all customers. So first it will create the connection. The connection is created. It is calling the command object and passing the store procedure with the connection string. Connection string is opened successfully without any error, and then finally the command object gets executed. Now here it loops through all the record, yes, and then click on next. Yes, so you can see we were able to pull in all the information from the database. Now let's add a functionality of searching the customer based on the ID. Now in this process what we are going to do is that we had already created a procedure which takes input as customer ID. We are going to show you how to pass parameters using ADO.NET. So let's go ahead into the DAL layer. Now we will copy the same method, but here I'll show you how do you pass the parameters. So I copy this, change the method name to get customer by ID, and then pass in int customer ID. Okay, and this all remains the same. You have to change the procedure name. So now this becomes get customer details by ID over here. Now before we proceed, what we need to do is that we need to pass the parameters, because this procedure over here expects a input parameter customer. So how do we do that? So we simply say command object dot parameters dot add, and we say customer ID, which is defined over here, this one. Customer ID and we tell SQL, we tell ADO.NET that is this variable type of int. Second, we pass the value which we got it in the variable customer ID. So we say parameters and customer ID dot value equals to customer ID. Customer ID which is passed in a parameter over here. Same, we pass it to this value. And finally, the most important thing, we say command type equals to system. Command type is command type dot store procedure. That's it. We need to only pass this variable, parameter variable and the value. The rest code remains the same. Now let's use it in our home class. Go to the home class and create a method, post method. Say so this is a post method, and this will say get search customer and pass in the customer ID, int customer ID. Now this all code remains the same. Only thing we have to change this, get customer by ID and pass in this variable, and then pass the view to the class. Now this is the only change, and in our HTML we have already placed two buttons. One was for searching and second button was to fetch all the records. Now if you notice, there are two buttons, both the type of submit. However, if you see in one of the submit button, I have added the form action. So this button fetches all the information. That is why form action equals to index, because in our home controller the method that fetches all the record is index, default index. So here I mentioned form action as index. However, in this case I have not mentioned the form action because by default the forms get submitted to the search customer method. So when you click on this method, it will take the input parameters and call this method to search the customer based on record. Let's go ahead and check a functionality. So this is calling all the method by default when the page is loaded. Fine. Now let's type in 3, which is Richard, and click on search. So here you can see 3 number is passed. Now let's go ahead to the main method in the data layer. Now see, if you notice, customer ID was passed. This is the parameter. We say it's an int parameter. We pass in the customer ID. Now we pass in the value. Command type is procedure. Open the connection, execute the query, and we got the result. Search customer. Okay, got it. I think search customers, and in my index post method. Okay. Okay, so there's so I am supposed to redirect it to index and then pass in the object. So that was a mistake. It was searching for a view as search customers, but we are supposed to show the result in the same page where we are showing all the records. So I am supposed to pass return view index, because index is our default page, and then the customer list object. So now this should work. So it fetched all the record. I'm searching 3, search. Now I remove the breakpoint this time. Yes, we are able to search, and then click on show all. We were able to see all the records. So guys, in this video I demonstrate how to create procedure in Microsoft SQL database, how to call the procedure in ASP.NET Core MVC using ADO.NET, how to call the procedure by passing the parameters using ADO.NET. So guys, I hope you like this video. Please do subscribe my channel and like this video. Thanks a lot.